Right, good evening everyone. Thanks for coming to MRUG tonight, and kind of got wrangled in talking to Kevin Fielding to actually come and do a presentation to you all after saying to him for the last year or so I must come and do something. So looking at the topic, which seems to be quite at the front of a lot of people's discussions at the moment, of actually checking Revit models. Lots of it coming about, lots of people issuing models and going, well, how do you actually check what's in it? So hopefully a few ideas. There's quite a few bits of technology in there. I'm going to hopefully show some bits of code, bits of Dynamo, bits of Revit, Power BI, and some live survey feedback. So hopefully it all works. We'll wait and see. So just a very quick introduction for myself. So Mike Turpin, I'm Director of Innovating Futures for an independent BIM consultancy company working across the UK. Various other bits and pieces, lots of logos and stuff there of the various bits I do. I won't bore you with all the details, but I'm an Autodesk developer. I do a lot of kind of API programming for Revit, Navisworks and the like. I chair the UK BIM regions across the UK, so hopefully you've probably seen a few of those groups around. Now part of the BIM Alliance. Also Autodesk certified professional for Revit structures, Revit MEP and Revit architecture. Working in various BIM and Revit roles for kind of about the last 10 years, so I think I don't need to know any more about that. And working with the UK Dynamo user group, so there's a separate plug for that. If you haven't joined it already, go and sign up, and I know Rob helps with the Northern group, which is trying to get a few more meetings in at the moment. So just a little bit about myself. So work as independent BIM consultants for Innovating Futures, helping clients with BIM adoption and standards, so all the fun stuff like the EIRs, the BEPS, COBE, IFC, all the stuff people love doing at the moment and getting asked for, and trying to work out exactly where the value is in that for what they're trying to do. Also a lot around the software side, so I support all the Autodesk applications, Revit, Navisworks, InfoWorks, Civil 3D, etc, etc, etc. So a lot of the plugin development, templates, model ordering, obviously which we're talking about tonight, which will be interesting, and a lot of digital transformation, BIM adoption schemes. So that's enough of that, because we're not here for that point. So why am I here? Model checking. See, I say one that's kind of come about. Does anyone reckon they've got a full solution for model checking at the moment in the room? Good, that's what I was hoping for. So if we kind of look back at the history of model checking, obviously something checks we do all the time at the moment for drawings. Go through this process. Many of you probably noticed those stamps or various stamps from getting things checked over the years. And drawings, it's all about proving what's actually going out the door. And at the moment, it's basically a process or workflow we're going through of handing bits of paper from person to person to person. So you're in a company, someone creates a drawing, spends so long drawing it up, hand it to another guy, they check it, hand it to another guy, they approve it, goes to someone else, gets issued. Or that's the theory anyway. I know sometimes people just fill in the initials anyway. Okay. And what's the purpose of checking it all? Basically, it's to check whether it's correct, incorrect. Checking that what you've actually put together, what the person's drawn, represents what the designers or the architect's ideas were, and what's actually on that paper is correct. There's nothing missing, there's nothing that's going to cause you any issues. At the end of the day, there's nothing that's going to get this guy coming up and suing you. So, not technically what should happen, but I think that's the main reason we do want to check what's going out, so that we're working together better, producing better results. So the problem is basically looking at the moment we're checking drawings. I think there's nothing too wrong about kind of what we're doing with checking drawings. You've got someone produces it, you check it, you look at it, you review it, it gets approved, it goes out. I don't think there's anything massively wrong with that process. But how do you actually apply that to a model? Obviously we all know a model is far more than a drawing. It's all about the data, the information, the kind of the stuff you do see, the stuff you don't see, the graphics, all that. So does this process actually work? And quite a nice quote I like is, you can't solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. I think particularly appropriate for this task, that we can't, in my mind, just go through that same process of someone looking at something, signing it off, going to someone else. So one of the solutions people have come up with recently for this problem, and I'm sure there's a few people in the room probably down this route, is sending out the models for information only. That great disclaimer on the drawing that says, here's a model, but we're not sure if it's not right. Don't blame us. Like, we're just providing it so that we look good and kind of you can see how it fits together. Which, yes, it solves a problem in the immediate sense, but I don't think it's a good long-term solution. Especially when you consider BIM's all about collaboration. So we're producing these models, and the idea of BIM being we put all of our data into a model, we collaborate models, we mesh them together, we have federated models, we can see all this information in one place, but then we put a disclaimer on it saying, well, actually you can't rely on any of this, so you might as well go back to the drawings. So it's not really in the essence of what we're trying to do. Also, another one that I find quite interesting for anyone who's sound enough as me, I am, to kind of read through all these documents and go through the CIC protocol, is it actually says in there, if you use this, that the model takes precedence over any drawings. So if you do issue a model along with your drawings, whatever is in that model, if it's different to what's on the drawings, then the model is the correct item. And a lot of people I know say, oh yeah, if it's on the drawing's correct, or the dimensions on the drawing's correct, or the text. But if you actually read this document, and a lot of people are appending it to their contracts now, that says that basically the model is king. So looking at the workflow, obviously quite a simple workflow historically for the drawing side of things. We just went from one to another to another. We really need to kind of think about this workflow and how it works with models. Can we afford to pass a model from one person to another, sign it off? Do we need more than one person in the model? Do we check models? Do we check drawings? Do we check views? Quite an interesting topic to see at the moment is saying, well, actually, do you check the model, or do you check a subset of information from that model? Maybe some of the data, maybe some checking views, don't necessarily have to be drawings. So what can we do is look at this in terms of kind of what we're doing. So a typical project, or kind of an example project, you take 100 drawings, then your checking process is you need to check 100 drawings. If you look at that in terms of a Revit model, you have one model, or maybe two models, three models, however you kind of pull it together. But basically you still have 100 drawings within that model. But also those 100 drawings are made up of maybe 500 views. Those 500 views in that one model might contain 35,000 elements, and those 35,000 elements might contain, if they only contain 20 parameters each, which I know a lot of models contain a lot more than that, you soon get up to 700,000 element attributes. And if you've got to sit and go through all those attributes, then it's going to take you a long time to check that manually. So our options at the moment are just keep going, carry on, kind of just go, yeah, fine, information, but really I think we need to solve this issue. Obviously I think that's why so many people are talking about it at the moment. Well, an interesting little kind of cartoon sketch I see here goes around as all these people saying, well, we don't have time to check the model, we don't have time to improve this, we'll just send the drawings out. It's got a sketch, if you can see it there, the guy with the sword going out to his fight. I don't have time to see any salesmen, I have a battle to fight. And the guy, see, they're selling the machine gun, so it's kind of, sometimes you've got to stop and not keep going to actually realise there's a far, far better way of doing things. So in my mind, our options now are really to kind of look at the ideas of this. What are we actually trying to check? Can we change this process? And really look at this workflow and go, do we just follow the same workflow? Do we check it? Do we throw people at it, time at it? Or can we look at this in a better way and say, what do we actually need to check from the model? Do we need to issue models? How do we issue them? Do we rely on them? Do we start suing each other again? How do we kind of get a collaborative BIM environment? I think is the kind of end goal to this. So just to, obviously we spoke a lot about kind of checking and validation and everything, but aware that people don't always kind of agree on what these checks and validations actually mean. So it was an event a few months back, the BIM for Real event, and this was a kind of key topic of what's the difference between a check and a validation, or what's the difference between validation and verification. So again, it's probably a little bit small on the screen for you there, but if we talk about actually checking something, so checking a drawing, checking a model, the kind of dictionary definition is to examine something in order to determine its accuracy, quality or condition, or to detect the presence of something. And then kind of an example being, customs officers have the right to check all luggage. So for me, this is a kind of saying that to check something, you're just looking at it and saying, does that look right? is there something obvious missing? So if you think of the kind of example there, customs officer checking luggage, they're not going through and telling you, oh, by the way, you've got your sunglasses or you've got your flip-flops. They're going through and saying, what am I seeing there? Is there something there that shouldn't be, or is it all kind of as it should be? And to kind of put it into a real-world example, anyone filling out a form on the internet, you get the box that says, what's your email address? A kind of check on that is saying, please tell us your email address. So if I haven't put anything in there, I hit submit, it's going to say, well, you haven't put anything in this box and you should have put something in there. So that's just a real simple check. Then looking at validate or validation, and it's basically to check or prove the validity and accuracy of something. So for me, this is checking it. So it's a bit more than a check, so it's looking whether something's there, but it's checking if the thing that's there is reasonable. If it is it kind of along the right lines of what you're expecting to be there. And again, relating that back to the kind of email example, if you fill in a box and you type some words into that box, you've passed the check, because the check's saying, have you put something into this box? You go, yes, I have. Now on the validation of that, it's going, well, you've put some words in there, or some letters in there, but you haven't put an @ sign. It's saying, well, all email addresses must have an @ sign. They must have a .com.co.uk. So validation takes it that one step further on that point. And then finally, verification, or to kind of verify your information. And the kind of definition of this is to make sure or demonstrate that something is true, accurate, or justified. So this is taking things a lot further now. We're saying it's not just checking that there's something there and it's of the right type, but it's definitely accurate, it's definitely true, which is kind of a big statement for this. And again, coming back to that email statement, so that's, you probably get these. So you've put your email address in, so you've passed the check. You've put it in the right format, so you've got something@something.com. But then they send you these emails to say, oh, please click on the link to actually verify what your email address is. So now they've sent you an email, you've clicked on that link, so you've verified that the information you put in that box is correct, because it's your email, because you've clicked and you've come back here. Does that kind of make sense in terms of what those stages are? So I think this is one that quite often comes up when we talk about model validation or model verification. It's like, what do you actually mean to this? Do you want to check your model? Do you want to validate your model? Or do you want to verify your model? And you can probably see that the different stages of those are obviously quite different in terms of how much time or effort those will take. So I think this is really where we're saying, what do we actually want to do? What do we need to do? If you're looking at your model, do you just need to check it? Do you want to check it? Or do you want to go right down and verify everything that's in there and say that if you've put FD30 for a door or a wall, is that actually an FD30? Or have you just put it in the right format? So I think with this as well, you need to think, what do you want to do? What do you need to check? But also be realistic about what you really want to achieve out of this, or what you can achieve out of this. So hopefully now, if I flip across, I'm hoping I can learn something from you, as hopefully you'll learn from me, and we'll go into a survey. So hopefully most of you have got a mobile phone on you. I'm expecting you're all kind of technology people, you love using Revit stuff, put your phone. So what I'm hoping to do, if this is going to work, is go live and actually do a live survey. So rather than sitting here and going, everyone stick your hand up, which seems a bit kind of prehistoric, analog, go into the digital world now. And hopefully do this live. So this is an example of a question, just real simple, what discipline are you? So if you look down at the bottom of the screen here, then hopefully everyone can read that. There's a website, if you go to on your phone, you don't need to get the app. It's basically live.voxvote.com, VOXVOTE.com. There's a pin number 46552. Hopefully what we'll see, if I start this question, you'll be able to vote on this. Hey, someone's in, a couple of people in. So we should be able to see the live results of this in a minute. We'll see who's in the room. So the reason I want to do this, I'm going to ask some questions in a minute around validation and verification of auditing models. And really I want to see kind of what people's thoughts are in the room. Because I'm not going to stand here and say, this is how you should check a model, this is what you should check. But I want to kind of ask some questions, see what kind of things we want to check within those models. So I'll give you all a few more seconds. It's actually working, which is quite surprising. So we see mainly architects in the room, quite a good percentage of MEP there, project managers, good, and some structures. Okay, so hopefully everyone's in who wants to get in there. So keep that there, and what I'm going to do is now switch to the proper survey. And also, if you fill out the survey on your phone, at the end it should give you a link where you can download all the results. So if you're interested in this, you should be able to get all the results. So hopefully, again, if everyone's on that link, live.voxvote.com, and hopefully this will come up. Is it coming up on that same number? Numbers 46552. Hey, someone's in. We're in. Okay, so the question here is basically, do you currently check or audit your Revit models? So what I want to kind of ascertain from that is, if you were to send a model out, do you review it? It might be a manual review, it might be a kind of automated review, you might check just certain things, you might just look at it, spin it around, but are you doing any kind of check, or are you just sending it out? Well, we've checked the drawings, so we're just going to send the model out for information. Okay, so a few more seconds on that. So that's quite a strong percentage of people who do actually check their models, which is quite surprising for me to start. It's and someone, how do you check your model? Someone who's voted yes. In fact, I might have actually. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've asked the wrong question there. I expected that to be a high level of people saying no. So you've kind of got me on that. So if I put up the next question, if no, then why not? But if you voted yes, say why you voted yes. So hopefully there should be a question up, just a word or two, kind of, if not, why? If you are, then kind of how you do it. Is it manual, automated, via drawings, just spinning it around, 3D review, etc. So hopefully we get a few words. Okay, clash detection, that's good. External checks, basic checks, manual, visual. Okay, perfect, that's some good ones. So maybe put some sensors into this, I don't think this is far through. Okay, so it's quite, obviously with these kind of word clouds, the bigger the word is, the more it's getting saved, so I think a lot of manual and visual checks there, which is good news. And clash detection seems to come up quite highly there. So before that goes off and out of control, I'll swiftly move on to the next question. So the next question here is, what do we need to check? So again, forget what you do at the moment, forget what's possible, forget how long it's going to take, what it's going to cost. In a perfect world, what would you want to check in a model if you're sending it out? So would you want to check just the geometry? So does everything look right? Is it in the right place? The data behind it, so have you got the right information, the right attributes? The design or engineering, so things like, is the corridor the right width? Have we got fire regulation distances, all of that? Or the actual kind of model quality. And for model quality, I'm talking in terms of kind of Revit build. So are you using lots of linked files? Have you put everything into groups? Are you using detail items, that kind of stuff? So really, what's the most popular? And I think you can see it's a multiple choice question there. So you feel free to pick a couple if they're important. Again, no limits on there. So it seems here again that, quite interestingly, for most people, I think the geometry seems to be the most important. Strongly tied there between the data and model quality, with the design engineering at the end, which again I kind of expect. So I'm assuming your design and engineering checks are done through your kind of drawings, that traditional workflow, but then the models you're actually checking more the geometry and the data within it. Okay, so again, some interesting results. So I think I've only got a couple more questions on this, and we'll move on. So now how do we want to see the results? So, or how do we want the results? So do you want a signed piece of paper that say, yes, this is correct, true or false? Results in a spreadsheet, Excel, dashboards, a kind of pass fail, so almost kind of putting it into a system and saying, yes, this is ready, or no, it's not, or some kind of other idea. So again, we'll just give this one about kind of 20 seconds or so to see what's coming through. Okay. I know everyone loves a good dashboard these days, so but it seems tied with the Excel. So, okay. So you'll actually be able to see that data, kind of take it, obviously, more into kind of an Excel world or into a kind of data structure, so you can, I guess, manipulate it and use it elsewhere, which is quite interesting. Okay. Again, some good results on that. So it seems Excel trumps a dashboard, which is an interesting one. That seems to be, I've got the same question, let's skip that. Right, so this one, previous historic results required. So what I'm trying to get at this one is, if you have to do a model check and maybe put it through a system, would you want just the result that you're interested in? So is this model here ready to go out? Does it pass these checks? Or would you want to record what's happened on each of those stages? So every single one, if I went back 3 revisions, what kind of score did it get, or kind of what things were right or wrong? Seems quite a high yes, you want to record every stage of what's going on, every stage of that check. Which again, quite a surprise result. And a few maybes in there as well. Okay, so I think probably just the last question now. Aha, okay. So this question, one standard check or made bespoke. So again, lots of different companies. I know everyone loves doing things in a different way, and obviously we see with Revit, there's lots of ways of doing things. If you were to do this check, would you want one check, possibly for your company or for your discipline, that says this is the model check, whatever model it is, whatever project, this goes out? A few checks, kind of in a 1 to 10 bracket. So you might want to check hospital projects go for this check, prisons go for this, or kind of many bespoke ones. So almost each project has its own check. So I'll open that one up to you.
Is this an ideal or real?
So again, this is an ideal, but also within the realms, this one of kind of some idea of, if you have a bespoke one for obviously every project, it's going to get complicated to implement. People might use the wrong one, the cost. So not too much restriction on it, but within a realistic world. Because I know otherwise someone will go, yeah, I want a bespoke thing for everything I do, and it's all perfect. So, okay, that's quite reasonable. So I think most people kind of a few different checks, or maybe it might be there's a simple check, a detailed check, kind of a stage 1 check, stage 3 check, etc., etc. Some interesting results there. So that was the last question. So thanks for doing that. That was I think a useful exercise, and hopefully it's kind of good to see everyone in the room kind of thoughts on that. I think with that app, it should let you possibly download the results as well, or see those at the end. A link. If not, I'll share them with Rob afterwards if he wants to publish them. There, it's all anonymous, so don't worry about anything like that. Okay, perfect. So go back into. So that's the idea. So like I said, what I didn't want to do is stand here and say, this is how you do a model audit, this is what you should check the data, you should check this and this. Because I think we're not at that stage yet. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things you can check and say what's possible, what's not possible, where we kind of want to get to with this. So finally, I want to kind of go through and hopefully I'm going to show you a few ideas. How am I doing on time, Rob? Cool, we've got a bit of time. So go through some of the ways we can check things at the moment. So we kind of given the background on this, a few ideas from yourself to me. I'll go through some ways we can do it and hopefully show you a bit of kind of other software, Dynamo, bespoke development, on some ideas where you could kind of go with this. So I sat and mapped out, there might be some more ideas around this, but the ways I think you can audit a model at the moment are manual process. So I think as people are kind of doing at the moment, spin it around, visual checks, cutting a few sections, clicking on things, seeing if the data is correct. Using Revit tools, like schedules, filters, that kind of stuff, Excel, third-party apps, other software, so non-Revit, Dynamo and bespoke development. So if we look into some of those, obviously there's the manual one, something at the moment which is taking a huge amount of time for people to do, and I think this is why people are putting in that kind of for information on the model disclaimers, because saying manual takes so long, why are we going to bother to do it if we're following the same manual process we do with current drawing checks? So the view on that one is basically just do not do it. It's to do manual checks and actually check a model enough to validate it, yeah, it's just going to take forever. Even that basic example of going 35,000 elements, which I don't think is a lot for a Revit model, to check all that data of 700,000 fields, you're going to spend your whole budget just doing that. So forget manual. One step higher, which is kind of still manual related, but a little bit of automation, is using some of the inbuilt Revit tools. So you can use things like, you've got the filters up on the side there, so you can filter, does this parameter contain this? A good one I've come across on structures is, are beams longer than this measurement because we can't fit them on the truck? So kind of doing some of those checks in there. Schedule here, so this schedule is filtered by fire rating, does not begin with an F or FD or whatever format you might put fire ratings in for a door schedule. So you get some of those out, and there's a count at the bottom. So you could do some of these really basic checks, but the problem comes in that you need a different check for kind of each thing. You could end up with a Revit file with 50 schedules in because you're checking all these different types. So whilst it does work, and I think it's a really good start at the moment to get something in place, I don't think it's a real sustainable option. Excel, again, kind of for me another step forwards. Lets you do a bit more than the standard Revit schedules, and obviously there's loads of tools of getting stuff out to Excel. You can create schedules, export them out using the standard Revit tools. There's what's it called? ID8 tools, plenty kind of linking Excel into Revit. Again, there you can kind of do conditional checking, kind of highlight it red if my door is higher than 2.5 meters. You can do some, what are they called? Mine's gone blank tonight. Pivot tables, things like this, counting, checking, reviewing that data. You can go into macros and various other bits. So I think at the moment this is where a few people are who are kind of moving forward with this. Everyone seems to be taking stuff, lots and lots of data from Revit, exporting it out, just doing big dumps into Excel and using some kind of macros or checks within Excel to see what data they got. But again, it does take a lot of time. It cuts the time down, but there's still a huge investment in doing that. There's some third-party apps. So does anyone use the Autodesk model checker? A couple. I think there's a presentation here a year or so back, so I'm doing the model checker. So I personally think that's great, but it's very limited. So anyone who has kind of played around with it, it will let you set rules and check your model against rules. But there's only a handful of rules pre-built, and whilst it does have a tool that lets you write your own rules, it's very limited. So when you first use it, you'll go in and go, oh, this is fantastic, I can check this, this and this, and I get a pass and fail. And then as you start to use it on a real project, you soon go, well, I want to check this and I can't, and I want to check this and I can't. And you get a report that if you can only check certain things, it's almost a bit pointless to do. And there's plenty of other apps. Again, I'm not going to go through and tell you about all these other softwares, but just an example, ID8 Explorer has various things. You can check the numbers of items and elements within there. So you can do, again, some parts of the checks. But for me, it's still limited to what you can actually achieve. Other software, again, plenty out there. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can do checks in Navisworks. Again, I think some people were saying they're checking at the moment clash detection. You can check the data in there. You can do quantification, quite good. Again, Celebri, very similar, but I think Celebri does the geometry checking a lot better. You can kind of go into, well, have I got the right kind of elements? Does a little bit of that architecture engineering check as well. And then Dynamo, which is kind of a love-hate, I think, at the moment for a lot of people. Few getting into it. Again, fantastic amount you can do in it, but also some limitations. So now hopefully I'm going to have as much luck as Keith did and get into Revit and show you.
What you're doing?
I'm in 18. 18's far better than 17, if you listen to Autodesk.
That's skill by error on my part.
So a model you'll all be familiar with, which is the standard kind of Revit sample project, so as not to kind of break any client confidentiality or anything. So we've got the model here. I'm going to go into Dynamo. How many Dynamo users in the room? So how simple? Okay, probably 40-50%. So hopefully you've kind of all seen this. It got brought in, I think, to 2017 onto the Manage tab. This Dynamo and Dynamo Player, which is visual scripting kind of within Revit. So I'll try and kind of give a bit of background as I go through for those who are not too familiar with it. I'm assuming Rob's laptop is up to scratch. I know it works the same speed as you. Okay, so all I'm doing here is I'm in Dynamo and I'll open up a script that I've already written. So what should we do first? Unnamed reference planes as a script. So this is the Dynamo kind of workspace here. So I'm going to zoom in. Just a few nodes. Basically, this is a way of scripting and telling the computer to do a check in certain steps through various nodes for those who are not too familiar. So I've said, get all the reference planes, find out what the name of those reference planes are, see if the reference plane name is blank or not, and then give me a list out of that. And this watch node will watch what the results of this is. So this is going to operate on the model that I've got here underneath, and it will go through kind of every part of that model. So if I hit run, and that's completed. So in this model, there's 2 reference planes which don't have a name. And the reason it says reference plane there is because any reference plane that doesn't have a name will just be called reference plane in Dynamo's world. So a really good little check, automated. Again, I can run this time and time again on as many different models as I want. Gives me a result. I can type that into an Excel spreadsheet, or I can put it in a report, whatever I want to do with that. So it helps speed this up a lot, and it checks some of the things that you can't necessarily check within schedules. Again, just a very simple example there. So I'll fire up another one. So I've got one here to compare the view scale to the detail level. So this is saying it will go through and check for each document view in my model, what's the scale, so 1 to 100, 1 to 10, 1 to 20, and it will check what detail level those are set at. So is it set to medium, coarse, fine? So again, very simple, finds them all, compares one to the other, creates a list. So if I just hit run on this, and hopefully that comes out there, so there's 168 views, and it's put these all into a list. Unlike the other one though, just getting a number's no good, so I want to kind of do some checks on those. So do if this equals this, take it out. So another thing we can do as part of Dynamo is actually write things to Excel. So if I unfreeze this and hit run, and there you go, in a few seconds it's published those out to Excel. So I've got the view name, the scale, and what detail level it's on. So I can go through this and go, yep, that's at 100, and it's at coarse view, that's fine. If I've got something 1 to 100 and it's on fine detail, then maybe that's not very good for kind of what I want in my project. So this one here, section through the main stair, 1 to 100, it's on fine. Maybe that's not up to what my BIM execution plan said it should be, or this is slowing my model up because 1 to 100, you really don't need all that fine detail in it. Again, 1 to 10 at medium, again, is that right? Should it be on fine? So I can go through and quickly do these checks. Again, just a very simple example there of how Dynamo can use to audit and check these models. So I won't go into any more on the Dynamo side. So I think this is one where at the moment I'm seeing most people are using for the auditing stuff. You can do all these checks. Obviously it's very quick. Once you've written the scripts out, you can save them in a folder, you can share them around your company, you can run them over and over again, and you get some numbers out. But I think the problem is, if you want to audit your model against 10, 20, 50 different checks, you've got to run the Dynamo script, 10 scripts, 20 scripts, 50 scripts, or build a massive script. It all starts getting quite long-winded and confusing. And again, it can easily run into a few hours to check every single model. So the last one, which I'll go into, is kind of the Revit API and bespoke development. And this is kind of scares some people off. I think this really we want to get to is actually we need to build in some applications to deal with these checks. I don't think it can be done manually. Some of it can be done via Excel, some of it can be done via Dynamo. I think to get this really working efficiency, we almost need kind of a push button. Is this model ready, yes or no? And that can come in a couple of ways. So you've kind of got buttons. So with this API, you can put code in like the Dynamo, but far more efficient, far quicker, far easier to roll out. Kind of a push button, get a result back. So again, I'll show you a couple of examples of that. I can get to Revit. So Again, same Revit model here, so something you'll be used to is the add-ins tab, so all these different add-ins, and whether you kind of buy one from a company or if you have something custom made yourself or you write your own scripts, they all come up to this same bar. So I'm going to go to, I've got an audit button here, so if I hit go on that, what you do is you don't actually see anything because of the way it's been written, but that will actually run an audit on this file. And if I can navigate to one of Rob's folders, Rob's documents, what it's done is this here, so 23rd the 11th, it's got this audit XML file. And what it's basically done is it's run several checks on this model and put it into an XML file. Again, whether or not you can see that, or if I can zoom in. So a simple XML here, it's gone through, it's given me the file name, the description, the revision, what the status of that model is, the file size, whether or not it's got a starting view set, how many model objects, so 5,700 model objects, number of warnings in the file, and unnamed reference planes. And you saw how quick it did that, it was kind of less than a second. If I run that again, I can go back to my Revit, just literally click on that, run it again, and when I go back to that file, what is it, public documents, open up the audit, and this time it's done it again, so it's just appended it on again. So this is my second audit. I get to put the time I've done this in there, and it's again just recorded what's in that file. So you could run this once a day, once a week, once an hour, once a fortnight, whenever you want to audit it, get those same results out. And again, this list can be as long as you want, check whatever you want, kind of get those results out there. Again, just an example of one way to do it, not saying this is the right way or the best way, just kind of one way that I've found works for a lot of people. Once you've got this information into something like XML, again, you can then see how do you actually want to view that data. So you could open this up, go into XML, open to a web browser, open in Notepad, scan through and find out, okay, I've got 5,000 model objects, pass, fail, whatever you want. You can bring this into Excel, or another one I quite like is this tool from Microsoft called Power BI, and again it's just a kind of dashboarding type tool, so whether you view things in Excel, or this kind of maybe what I class as kind of an update of Excel from Microsoft, kind of taking it into the 21st century. So this is just running some dashboards on another XML I've got. Again, it's a bit small on screen there, I don't think I can zoom in. But just a dashboard that each line in that XML, so check my model revisions, revision 0, revision 1, revision 2, and how many warnings I had. So revision 0 was not very good, I had 33 warnings. If I come down here, revision 1 had 3 warnings. So I can see over the progress of time how well that project's doing. Again, I like going on about unnamed reference planes, it's a particular bug of mine. But again, revision 0, 5 unnamed planes, but then something happened between revision 0 and revision 1. They've now got 56 unnamed reference planes. So again, I could say, well, the maximum you're allowed is 50. I'm rejecting that file from you. Model objects, again, you can go through and see how many model objects they got each stage, etc., etc., etc. And this is for all the revisions. I can also check just the latest revisions. So this is the number of warnings in the file. Again, you can do all the kind of changing colours, having animations, whatever you want in there. Gives you all the data, what the date of that model was, etc., etc., etc. Again, just an idea kind of there of what's possible. Okay, and the other one I was going to show you, so that's kind of buttons within the API, which is great. I think right in these tools, you just got to say to someone, oh, every Friday can you hit the model audit button and publish me an audit file. That works. But also within the API, we can actually take even more control into Revit, and more control even than Dynamo allows us. And this little bit of script just here, these few lines, actually allows us to control Revit every time a file opens, closes, starts up, shuts down. And if I show you that, a fun little tool I've installed now on Rob's laptop forevermore. Yeah, I just made it run slow so you can keep up with it, Rob. So now every time someone shuts a Revit model down on this computer, and I hit close, and I close that view, don't want to save changes, it'll pop up with this little window saying, "Hi Rob Clark, your model was 256 megabyte when you closed it. I'm going to publish that back to the company server that records all the Revit models." So again, just a very kind of simple, kind of gimmicky thing of what you can do with that, but you don't even have to show a dialog box. You can have this kind of in the background silent, so every time someone in your company closes a model, it will record the file size, unnamed reference planes, number of model objects, etc., etc. And you could also go down to the level of saying, every time someone closes a file on a Friday afternoon, record this information, publish it on the C drive, publish it on the company server, etc., etc. So there's a huge array of things you can actually do if you get right into kind of the ins and outs of how Revit works for model checking. I think this is where we really need to get to with this, of actually going into it and saying, automate it so that every time you kind of run Revit, every time you issue a model, it will just check it in the background. And until we can get it running that efficiently, I don't think people are going to sit there for weeks checking Revit models properly. So that's a very, very quick tour of model auditing. Hopefully some ideas for you. Thanks for doing the survey, very useful for me to kind of get some ideas and opinions. Something I've spent a lot of time looking at and developing and working on, so it's interesting to kind of see where people's ideas are on this. So yeah, any questions? Yep.
How long did it take us to learn the API to let you
That's a fair question. How long does it take you to learn Revit? It's, so the question there, sorry Rob, for the camera is, how long does it take to learn the API? Basically the API is a language that uses C# programming language as the main language behind it. It depends on a whole host of things, but basically I'd say, how long does it take you to learn French or Spanish? I think you really need to learn the ins and outs, and if you're going to kind of dabble in it, it's going to take you years and years. If you get right into it and you're going to spend 10 hours a week every week, you could probably learn it in 6 months. Yeah, if you're going to spend an hour or two playing with it every now and again, it's going to take you years. I've been using the API now for coming up for about 6 years. I'm still learning parts of it. So yeah, it's quite a significant thing to do. So you've really got to be able to get into it if you want to go there, or use a developer who can actually write that themselves. So, again, I didn't want to kind of show off what I could do, but just say this is kind of what's possible. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Is there a way of informing external consultants that their information that we've issued previously is out of date? So rather than telling what about externally?
So auditing someone else's model to check what they're doing.
Yeah, and say if their model is out of date or not.
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm seeing quite a few contractors kind of getting involved with at the moment, is getting their models in and checking those models and saying, oh well, you haven't done this, or you've not put the information in that was required in the EIR, those things. So yeah, you can run it on basically any model, as long as someone sends you your model. And again, whether you use Dynamo or Excel or the API, it's just a case of putting what rules in that you want. So I guess whether you use a kind of application that's developed for the mass market for model auditing, or whether you have something kind of in-house that does it, it's just deciding what you actually want to audit or what's worth checking, what's important to you really.